Robin is on site and will do introductions. Robin? Hello, Robin.
It seems like the feed is frozen.
No.
Yes, it seems frozen here, and it still says off air, so I'm not sure.
I'm showing live, on my end anyway.
Yeah, it says live from my end.
Ellen will fix it.
Yes, let's hope so. We'll be patient. I don't want to stop broadcast because once I do, it's done.
Exactly. I learned that the hard way this week.
Did you?
Yeah, I was doing a project with a classmate, and we were going to record it, and then I'm like, all right, let's stop for a moment, and nope, had to start another session.
Yeah, there's no pause option, which is can be difficult.
They should have a pause function and say, please wait, we're experiencing technical difficulties, and have like a little funny animation.
Yeah, or you could have an error 404 equivalent. Oh, they've dropped out completely. Is Patrice on air? I haven't heard her yet.
Hi, Patrice. We can't hear you.
So does anybody have a filler conversation starter?
I've been tracking this Open Ed conference and listened to the opening keynote this morning. It was it's been a real dynamic conversation that's been going on. So I'm really.
What was that about?
A lot around the I would say there was a whole running conversation about the finances in terms of Open Ed and who's owning it and who's got control of it.
Hello.
Hello, welcome back.
So before we go any further, I will tell you that we have on and off been having wireless problems at the conference. Mostly it's good, but occasionally not so much. So if that happens again, just sit tight and we will try to get right back to you.
Perfect. We are broadcasting live, so we're glad that you got to join us. If you can introduce each other or yourselves around the table, and then the virtual group will introduce themselves too.
Wonderful. Hi, everybody, and greetings from Open Ed 15. We are in Vancouver. And my name's Robin DeRosa, so I'm your on-site buddy for Virtually Connecting. And I am also a professor of interdisciplinary studies at Plymouth State University, where I do a lot of work with open pedagogy. And I'm going to spin this around, and we'll just hear from the people in the room. Just tell us briefly who you are, and I'll especially note our featured conversationalists over there. So.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer England. I work in academic technology at the University of Minnesota.
I'm Scott Robinson. I work in instructional technology at Plymouth State University in New Hampshire.
I'm Dan Blickensturfer, and I work in curriculum and assessment at College for America in New Hampshire.
I'm Brian Lamb. I work at Thompson Rivers University, Kamloops, British Columbia, Canada.
Yay.
I'm Al Levine. I'm from the internet.
I'm Jameson Miller. I'm a doctoral student at the College of William and Mary in Virginia.
I'm Kristen Schneider. I'm Scholarly Communication Librarian at Plymouth State.
All right, so we've got a really high-tech maneuver here with the laptop, but we'll do the best we can. So why don't you tell us who you guys are?
And I'll start. I'm Helen DeWard at Lakehead University in Orillia, Ontario, and head to Wendy next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Wendy Tallio. I'm a learning technologist, and I'm based in Alice Springs, Central Australia. It's 10 o'clock in the morning here on Thursday, so it's a great time to hang out.
Hello, Alice Springs.
Hi, everyone. My name is AK. I am also an online personality, and I'm always having fun with open education, so I figured I'd join in.
And Patrice?
All right, I'm on a different device now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. I'm Patrice Presco, and I'm an instructional designer at Cornell University.
Okay, some highlights. Let's talk about what the conference has been like for you so far. There's been a lot of chatter and talk on Twitter, and it was an interesting keynote session this morning that I got to listen in on. So just a sense of top topics for today.
So maybe I'll start before we talk to Alan and Brian. Ask other participants who are here to give their 2 cents, because it's neat that we have librarians, instructional technologists, and faculty here. From my perspective, I'm always hungry for the open pedagogy stuff, so that's really where I've been trying to gravitate. So that's, I think, why I sort of end up looking at Brian and Alan's stuff. We did have a lot of stuff, I think, focused on some of the basics of cost savings and how to sort of pitch OER today. So I went to a bunch of sessions on that stuff. But I'm really interested to hear from some of the newer people who are here about what you guys thought was like a takeaway maybe from a session that you saw today. And then we can turn to talk to our presenters. But anybody want to chime in with an interesting tidbit?
I definitely feel like there's a fire hose aspect of there's so much going on and so much to try to absorb. And one of the sessions I was just in was with these 2 fine folks talking about sort of using WordPress and different tools to create a roll your own indie ed tech, which is really, really interesting and probably challenging. But the idea that it's not just the LMS, there are things that you can sort of piece together, and was really cool.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Dan on the fire hose aspect. I think sitting in some of these sessions while trying to keep an eye on Twitter and what's going on is a lot to take in, but it's actually, I mean, pretty rich. I think I'm meeting people that I've been following on Twitter for a long time. I get to meet people in person, but I still think I've talked more on Twitter with a lot of the people in the room here than I have in person. So I don't think that you're getting that much less of an experience by tapping into this through Twitter. What you're seeing there, I mean, really is the conversations that we're having here in the room. But it is nice to hear from some of the most serious thinkers, I think, on these topics. And I would say that what we'll hear more about on Splots and this approach to trying to make EdTech actually functional, open pedagogy actually functional, not just like a promise, but something that you can actually implement, I think is what my takeaway from your session. Really helpful one.
So, if it works for you guys, it seems like it might be a good time to ask Brian and Alan to talk a little bit. We just came out of a session with them where they were looking at, it was about Splots and the dark web. I'm sure that explains just about everything you need to know.
We want to hear you explain
so
it,
much
yeah. Paraphrase it.
I was prepping for being here, so I'm asking my 2 academic technology friends after we got out of the session, like, what the hell did they just say? So I think I have a basic idea of what a Splot is, but I think that might be a good question to these guys.
So that's the segue into what is a Splot?
We don't know. We don't know.
Yeah, we
Can you
started
spell
with
it
the
first?
acronym, and then we just started plugging words into it. It came out of an idea where we were discussing our own frustrations in helping people get onto the open web. That the approach, which I've been doing for over a decade now, of just giving people a blog site, maybe doing a workshop with them, and some follow-up support, works for some people, but we were losing a lot of people too. So to sum it up really quickly, we started to have conversations well, let's not even really think about what our preferred tool is. I mean, we tend to see value in that pain of getting to know WordPress, because when you come out of it, you've got this really powerful skill that you can use in so many ways. But at the same time, if we can get past that kind of ideology we have and just say, if all we really care about is getting people onto the open web in the least painless way possible, and then have the result be something they actually feel good about, what does that look like? So, I mean, we haven't I don't think it's like we have. I don't think we feel like, well, we've made all these slots. Like, we made a couple, but to me, I think the idea, there's two main ideas. One is making it as easy as possible to participate on the open web, and the other one we do is we don't collect any personal data obligatory. So people can put their names on it, but it actually defaults to anonymous, and we don't need them to create an account to be able to work on the site. So that's another principle. Which was partly driven by our privacy laws, but I think also in this age of surveillance and analytics and big data, I think it has other resonances as well.
There's the dark web.
That's what I tried to stay away.
If you want it, this guy will show you.
I can take over if you want. No problem. You won't want me to. No.
And Splot's kind of like just an idea or mindset, you know, and yeah, we did it specifically in this WordPress mode, but we're also trying to think about it doesn't have to be WordPress per se, and it's not anything that it's going to be like this is going to change my entire course. We're hoping it's like an avenue for people to plug in, but we do start with this thing, and because at the same time we were doing this, we were doing some professional development with faculty at TRU where we wanted to encourage them to start doing some blogging and thinking about setting up a portfolio type site. And it's that thing where you give the people the blank WordPress dashboard, and there's all these things on the side, and most people never even venture too far into it. And so the WordPress interface, which I love and adore and have been breathing for about 8 years, when you're brand new to it, it's like, what do I do with all this? And so for some of these instances, we want to be able to use some of the things that WordPress can do as a platform, but maybe you don't need to be in a WordPress authoring environment. And so I was able to figure out some ways to do some of the functionality for a much smaller scope thing, like just for writing something that gets published cleanly and looks nice on the web, or just for being able to share various kinds of media. And honestly, they're kind of simple things, you know, but what's been fun is to see over the last 12 months or so the way some faculty at TRU and elsewhere are starting to think about possible ways of using these that we hadn't thought before. Speak.
Yeah.
I call him the man in the vest, Scott.
So the ease of use is really nice. Do you think it can be a stepping stone into someone adopting that blank template and saying, now I can really do what I want because I couldn't really do things. I can input. Or is, you know, I think there's some value. Some people would argue that there's value to allowing students to really struggle with technology and understand how it works so that they can really feel like they own it, as opposed to being given a template and being manipulated, if you will, and then there's something that comes out that's kind of canned, if you will. So I could see both sides of it, but I think, you know, the ease of use is really attractive, especially when you're just trying to like get people into it. So I
don't think you don't have to choose.
Yeah,
I mean, in the case, you know, there was a case at TRU where an English prof just wanted his students to publish 1 or 2 essays.
Yeah.
And to me, like learning WordPress, it could be something that could be useful to some of them, but for some of them it just gets in the way. And really, it's like I just want them to write something and maybe embed some media and add some links. And not necessarily have to like teach them what's the difference between a post and a page, and you know what's a tag and a category. So I think, you know, we want to think about ways we can do both.
We talked about Darcy Norman in our session. I'm reminded of something else he once said about learning management systems, where he said he likes to defend learning management systems every now and then. I think he does it just to get a rise out of me, but he said something like, well, the LMS does have a place because it's like training wheels for the web. So his point is that the LMS provides an on-ramp for people to get online, and it frames it in such a way that doesn't intimidate them. And I guess what I kind of like about some of the Splots that Alan's built is it serves that same function. Well, it doesn't have to be an LMS. We can think of other ways to have training wheels for the web. To complement, you know, what you're saying, which is kind of the more immersive idea of creating media literacies, which is something why I think, frankly, we hadn't looked at approaches like this before, because I've always believed that. I would say, yeah, there's pain here, but you come out of it with a fundamental set of skills that are going to carry with you, you know, for years beyond your graduation. And I've seen it, you know, where English grads are able to, like, tell me, well, we got jobs because we're able to build a website, and we were able to show that instead of just being an English grad, you know, going through their 2-3 lost years of trying to get a job, which I did. you know, that they can say, I can build a website. Here it is. Yes, I actually can make an online video. Here it is.
Well, that's one of my questions I have for you guys is, so I use Reclaim with my, you know, totally media illiterate first-year students, and just, you know, they say, like, I don't know how to do that. I'm like, I know, me neither. Like, what are you going to do? And so they build a certain kind of literacy through even the choices. Like, we use Reclaim, but they actually have the choice to use WordPress. .com and have the ads, and, you know, so we go through that whole thing, and they read that seminal essay that student wrote, which is like, is a domain your own if you grade it, right, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the questions I have for you guys is, you know, at the end, do you see this as kind of a template into which students are just, you know, putting content, or do you think this is, as you were talking about at the beginning of the session, kind of like a gateway into feeling comfortable and confident on the web? Or is it just the kind of thing that once they get out of this experience with that professor, they actually don't really know how to do anything because they need those training wheels from Splot to, you know?
Maybe. You know, there's going to be some satisfaction out of being able to see their work in a public space, I would think. Or maybe just in a way that's functional as far as the media sharing. So I'm like, you know, use as many different approaches as you can get. You know, I remember I was at Mary Washington when they were first rolling out the domains for their students there, and I remember this one event where they had some students talk about their portfolio work, and they said, like, okay, we found out you're giving us domains as incoming freshmen. It's like, we don't know what that means. You know, we're trying to navigate all this other stuff that the university's throwing at us. We don't domains. But what happened is that because it was kind of spread across several courses, that faculty were using it in a context for assignments, the students, as when their first meaningful use of their sites was to do some of their work, creative work or expressive work for their classes, then they circle back and start to see why they might want that domain experience. So it's just like, wow, I get a domain. You know, yes, you know, I don't know if you talk to your students, why would I want a domain? I have Facebook, you know, exactly. And so, you know, I don't think just saying, like, here's your domain is going to open the magic door.
So empowering, honestly.
But it's having them experience some, you know, some things, which might be, okay, in my biology class we use this thing where we posted images, and then, you know, and over here they made me create, you know, a horrible Wix site for my class project, and so, you know, maybe they'll get a sampling of these different experiences. And so I don't think we have to feel like we have to say, we have the perfect solution for you, this is it. I mean, they have to figure out, you know, what works for them. And honestly, I believe there are people that Wix probably will be behind enough.
Right.
to that point, and to your earlier point, I think it's really...
I'm being facetious, okay?
but in some ways, the earlier point about if a faculty member needs their students to produce 2 essays and get them on the web quickly, Splot is a great solution for that.
Yeah.
With sort of a minimal ramp up.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, I mean, the way we set up is the student, we allow them to not put their name on it. So they could be anonymous, they could be Freddy the Wonder Lizard, and then there's actually a field that we created that doesn't get published, but the instructor can see. So they could identify themselves, even if, you know, I sit in the second row. So the instructor could say, don't put your name on this for public, but you can let me know who you are privately if you want feedback, or whatever way they see to design this. And I mean, we had some ideas when we came up with these, but they're just the beginning, and you know, people do suggest some things, and, you know, at some point someone's, why don't you have an ability to make it private? I like, I don't feel like it.
Yeah.
And so, like, I could throw, like, that's going down the road to Darcy Norman, where you start to throw in all these different features, and so we're trying to keep them somewhat simple, but flexible.
I just want to open it up in case, because we could keep going, I'm sure you've noticed, but I see there's some stuff in the chat. Doesn't seem like anything that needs to be asked here, but are there...
I think just around access and ownership, authorship. So students are authoring anonymously. They're, you know, engaging without claiming authorship. Just
I think one of the keys is that they have a choice, so they can they don't have to create a login and an account with the Splot. They can just choose to basically take their content, put it up there. Then they can enter a name, but if they want, there's also a default that just lets them keep anonymous. So they've got sort of levels of choice, right?
Instead of the system saying you have to enter your name, you could say, well, you can choose to put your name in, or you can put someone else's name in. And so, I mean, and it depends on the whole purpose. I mean, there's obvious reasons why you want students to put their name on their work. So, I mean, one of the scenarios we played out is conceptually we have a way of using it as a way to be like an online journal. So in that case, yeah, you do want your name on it because it's a publication. But so you don't always know. I'm just sometimes some of these sites that to me the functionality that they're doing is like, I don't see why you need me to create an account to do this. And so it seems like the default, like everywhere you go you have to create an account. And so like I have so many accounts I don't know where they are.
Well, that's because a lot of those services, of course, have to be able to demonstrate how many users they have. Yeah. And that's one of the luxuries we have where we are. Like, we're not beholden to that. We just, our goal is to create the best tool for learners and instructors.
Do you call that the light web?
Maybe we should. But I mean, it is, the private sector has a lot of advantages on us in terms of resources and da-da-da-da-da, but we have a few advantages too, and that's one of them.
Doing a slow clap on that one.
Another thing that happened was, some of these things we were trying out, and we were showing some people at TRU, and they would say, "That's great, but is it possible to do X?" And so, I mean, how often with your software do you get to say, you can't do everything, but if instead of just buying a thing and being happy with it, you get to pick whether your car has, well, you can pick colors. That's a bad analogy, but when you finally get your car in the colors you picked, you can't go back and say, I think I want an 8-cylinder engine instead of a 6. I think I made a mistake. And with code you can do that. This is a terrible metaphor.
I think that makes sense. And that constant set iteration. What I love about tools like this is it has made it less intimidating for people to kind of step outside the LMS. And so now the conversations I have aren't like, how do I learn how to operate this content tool? It's kind of like we start having discussions about what does it mean to be anonymous. Like the question you had, do the students have to put their name in? Well, that's a human level decision. It's not imposed by the technology. So it's like you decide whether you want the students to have to put their name on it, or you have a conversation with your students. And suddenly you're talking about online identity, and you say, well, on the one hand, you're building a positive attribute. On the other hand, maybe you're, and that's the conversation you end up having, which is so much more rewarding than a lot of the technology conversations you can have with instructors. So I actually find those kind of dilemmas fascinating and fun, even when we don't really solve them.
Yeah, I'd love to connect this.
Yeah, I just had a comment there. It's really good to hear about the LMS and going outside of the LMS because for the university that I work for, they've pay a lot of money to use an LMS, so they're sort of going, well, if you want to build a portfolio, here's the tool in the LMS to do that. But I really appreciated what was said about other resonances, because as soon as you look outside of the LMS for a better portfolio tool, which there's many, you do get those other resonances, and so it's really interesting to hear what you're saying about those extra conversations that you can have, which I've experienced when I've shown staff who might be doing like a graduate certificate of teaching and learning, and they're required to do a portfolio, and quite often they find a better tool, and so it's not just using the better tool, but it's those other resonances and those other conversations that they all of a sudden can share this a lot easier, and they can get input, and they can have conversations with other people on the open web. So I appreciate the conversation.
I'm working with a colleague in the UK, and she's teaching a class where they're very paranoid about leaving the LMS, and she's trying to figure out ways. Basically, she's iframing some of these sites into the LMS. I'm like, isn't it just easier to link out? And it's almost like she's suggesting that the school and the students feel more secure if it has like an LMS frame around it, and it's not like you're any more protected than going out. And you know, we should stop, you know, coddling our students, and we
Well, in
need
that case, it's dishonest too, because you're not keeping them safe.
Exactly. But the students have been conditioned to, like, if it's within that box of the thing.
Well, yeah, and if actually there was like encryption happening and they weren't being tracked, and you actually were providing that, then that would be a different issue. But they're not. You were going to say something before, right?
Well, yeah, I was going to say we could connect exactly. I mean, the way the day played out. Previously, Brian and Alan presented on a project that they worked on called the Agora project, right? Some work that they did in Mexico, and I tweeted about what they were doing there that was very anti-LMS. And it's this amalgamation of using all these different tools in there. And I said, yeah, like, you know, down with the LMS. You know, we don't need it. You've got all these tools. And someone responded that, well, okay, thereby you've given an immediate head start to your already well-connected and advantaged students. Like all the technical bias that's built into that. And then we move from that session into your Splot, which is basically answering that critique, I think.
Or trying to address it. I think because that critique holds a lot of weight. And actually, Justin Wright posted a piece on wiki use in schools and found that, you know, schools that were under-resourced, if they used wikis at all, had very poor installations that weren't typically supported, and they were done in these very formulaic ways. Whereas schools that had the benefit of having great tech people on and had the opportunity, and they can resource people to come to conferences like this, they were using wikis in incredibly creative and productive ways, and it was often even the same tool. And then actually there's some fairly clear empirical studies that the richer the school, the more likely they are to support open source, which is kind of weird. But you can, if you've ever tried to support open source in an institution that's not ready for it, you totally know why that is. But it should, you know, those are the kind of issues, like, we don't have answers for that, but that's the stuff I like talking to, and I feel really privileged to know people like Alan and meeting people here that care about that and actually want to take a crack at it, because I think the worst thing to do is just be passive and accept this platter of, you know, really substandard, and, you know, because nobody likes these tools. Like, very few people. I do know a couple professors in my institution that are very proud of how they use Moodle, and they put a lot of effort and art into it. So I don't want to diminish what they're doing, but those people are really rare. And when you think about how fun the internet can be, it just seems like so many lost opportunities.
I also think, you know, because I teach at a public institution, and for me, the LMS, you know, we use Moodle, but, you know, sister institutions are paying, you know, $30,000+ or whatever for these LMS systems, and there's something to me about teaching my students who often don't, you know, some of them don't even have a computer or whatever, that, and I think in this sense it's helpful to be an English professor too, because I truly, my answer to almost anything tech related is like, I have no idea. But if you suggest, really, if we can find a way to get the hardware, you know, that's really my thing now, is like trying to figure out, like, how can I get a laptop into the hands of all of my students? If I can get them that, and then I can teach them that the only thing they really need is confidence, right? Like a hacker's confidence, that they can pick up almost anything that they need for free out there to do the work that they need. I mean, the hardware issue is not a minor issue, so I don't mean to suggest that, like, it's a democratizing thing automatically, but to me, I think teaching that it's not even media, we talk about it as media literacy, it's a kind of literacy, but I really find that it's really about confidence, because anytime you go to the help desk, you know, the first thing they say is like, yeah, let's Google that, I don't know how to do it. And so you sort of want your students to just gain a sense that they can find the tools that they need, and they're not going to need $20,000 to go buy some massive platform or whatever. They're going to be able to find a free app that does something that they can do, and that's been a big lesson to me.
I think
students, you know.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important, Robin, because I worked in the South Pacific in developing countries, and for them to have access to these tools for them it's not about, oh, you know, I've got a choice. They don't have an LMS. They don't, or they might have an LMS through one of the universities that operates in the South Pacific, but to have access to free tools that they can use, they just need access to people to support them in the tech, for sure.
Let's see, AK, I love the LMS bumper sticker.
He's got one on his car, I bet.
So one of the questions that I often get, and I'm actually interested in hearing how you address this question, is, okay, there are these awesome tools on the web outside of the comfort zone of the LMS. What happens if they go away during the semester because they are free? And the LMS won't go away, we're paying for it, so at least we'll have it at the end. I always go back to my roots in a sense, and I always used to tell people, okay, you've got a PowerPoint? Well, print out slides so you can put them on the slide projector, an actual transparency projector. So I always had a backup there. I do something similar. How would you address the question of what happens if this technology that I'm using goes away mid-semester?
Well, I would just personally say, having just visited a financial planner for the first time, which was no fun at all, but you know, that sort of diversify your portfolio thing, I think makes a lot of sense. So first of all, I would take issue a little bit with like the LMS doesn't go away, in the sense that, yeah, it's probably not going to go away in the middle of the semester, but you know, when you switch from one tool to another, faculty lose things all the time out of that. But in addition, you know, the students have a guaranteed loss of content every time that LMS, you know, one of the things I always talk about is, you know, you're going to import your course for the next semester, so you just erase all the irrelevant stuff, which is anything your students have produced. So I think that sort of loss of work is a problem, even for those contained systems. But in general, I think getting to understand that the tools are transitory, that's sort of the beauty of technology constantly improving. So as a result, you can't, you know, count on your repositories to be stable. So you need to keep moving, I think, your stuff along. And that's why I think that media literacy really matters, because you just can't rely on the stability of these places to hold your stuff. But also diversifying and keeping your things in multiple places, I think is probably a good idea too, which is decentralized as opposed to decentralized thing. But you know, that's the English professor, so I don't know why he listened to me, but maybe other people have.
That's pretty sensible.
That was all really
yeah.
good. I mean, I have to admit, I mean, if we were having this conversation 8 years ago, I probably would have been talking about tools like Flickr and Delicious and tools. I mean, you know, Flickr's still around and actually similar functionality, but you know, a lot of those other tools have gone by the wayside that we felt so enthusiastic about. Or if they're still around, they're in a form that's far less, you know, user friendly. It's much more, you know, like everything else. Frankly, I think that's a big part of the reason why I think the Reclaim movement has some resonance. It's this idea of you know, controlling and owning your own data. And even a tool like Known, you know, they provide an interface where you can post to Twitter and post to Facebook, but your content still lives on your server, and it just connects to these tools by an API level. So you're you're kind of controlling the way you're interacting with these third-party tools. So you know, there's still other issues. I mean, when you do the Reclaim model, you probably have a higher risk of being hacked than if you have a professional sysadmin running your server, depending on how good your IT department is. So there is an element of risk there. But I think, honestly, I think your question is a big reason. And outside of classes, you know, yeah, if people get in the habit of trusting third-party places to store their photos, they should understand it can disappear on them, whether it's their classwork or something from their life or their business. So again, those skills to understand, you know, where your artifacts live and what it means and who has access to your data and what they can do with it. You know, I think that's a challenge. It's tricky. I don't have like a recipe for it, but it's fascinating and fun, and I think we actually have an obligation to try to deal with it.
And if you're looking for some ironclad guarantee, I mean, you're in the wrong business, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, so, you know, we can't stop an asteroid from falling on us or, you know, catastrophic, you know, all our stuff on our Reclaim server, if the electric grid goes out, you're kind of hosed. And so, we're not necessarily feel like we have to have like this 100%, thing. And so there's a middle ground between like somewhere local to reclaim and unclaimed. And so, Flickr is my favorite example because I've been using it since 2004. I've got 40,000 photos on there, but that's not where they live. I mean, I've got them organized in redundant hard drives at home. And if Flickr disappeared overnight, yeah, it would be a bad thing, but I still have my photos. And so I think what I worry about is when people just blindly put their stuff in a place and don't think about having some sort of, not necessarily always a backup, but if they do have to recast it somehow, I don't want to be beholden to some company or some platform. I want to, the ideas for my instructional materials or my ideas should come from me in a way that if it comes down to it, I should be able to improvise. The same thing when you go into class and all of a sudden, either the projector doesn't work or something goes wrong. You don't just cancel class and say, we're going home. I mean, as teachers, you're always improvising in class, right?
Wait,
and so you should be able to.
I didn't get the memo.
What else do you guys have over there? Anything else we can do for you?
I was just thinking about all of the instructors who are bound to their LMS and if they need some splot time.
It's like quiet time.
Healthy dose.
I don't know. That sounds like Candyland or something.
Patrice, do you have a question or comment?
Nope.
Oh, I see her talking. We can't hear.
Who is it?
Patrice, maybe she can use the chat box.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. No, we face a big. Everybody worries about FERPA. They like to keep everything safe inside the LMS. So we have. We being those of us that want to venture outside of the LMS have difficulty gaining acceptance, into that at our university.
It seems to be there's like 3 levels of university. There's the ones that are really encouraging of the open pedagogy and the open web work. Then there's the ones that are really locked down in the LMS, and it's really hard for faculty to get out. And then there's some universities where the sort of technical savvy is so low that people are just getting away with anything they want because nobody really understands what it is that they're doing. And I think there's a lot of people in that category.
And that mindset that I'm worried about FERPA, so I'm just going to leave it all in the LMS is kind of not I'm not an expert, but that's not what FERPA is about. It's about letting the students decide, figure out what information them is. It's basically your institution is not going to give away student information, identifying information, without them knowing about it. So when a student runs their own website, they don't have to put their name on it. They don't have to identify themselves, and you're not mandating that they put public information with identifying information out. So I think just like, it's like the same way you hear a lot of faculty talk about, I just put all my copyrighted material on the LMS, and it's like, yeah, that kind of solves the legal problem, but it doesn't solve the ethical problem of information.
Yeah, either. It just makes you less likely to get caught.
It's a crutch. It's a definite crutch.
I kind of
maybe.
I have my own bad. Oh, sorry. What were you going to say?
Just a quick comment. Maybe there's a 4th category of organisations that they have the LMS, but then they have a specialty team that are going to produce open source information or open source, and in the university I work for, they have a special team to do MOOCs. So the MOOC team and the open source team are crunching away at their little corner, but generally it's like the LMS rules. So maybe there's another category there where the process to get open source seems to be rather long and laborious.
It wasn't her check or something.
Oh, okay.
We should probably kind of
Yeah,
wrap.
we're kind of getting the signal over here that we need to wrap up because it looks like the room is getting busier and we're having a harder time hearing.
It's a storage room.
Yeah, but we have to get out of the storage closet. They want to put some mops in here. So.
It's been a wonderful conversation. It's a very lively chat.
Let's say hi.
Oh wait, Clint, would you like to say hi?
Hi, everybody. Pop in and say hi and hope it was a good session.
It was excellent conversation.
Good. Wonderful. I'm glad it happened. Excellent. Thanks.
Let's put the red carpet out for Be Connecting and set a new standard.
Excellent.
Yeah,
I agree.
And welcome here at the conference. And thank you to all of you guys remotely. And stay on Twitter with us because we're really getting a lot from you guys. So keep tweeting and we'll all keep our eye on it tonight and try to respond if we can.
Excellent. Thank you, Robin. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, bye.
Okay. Stopping.
Bye.
Bye. And stopping your broadcast in 3, 2, 1. Bye.